Okay, for today, I need to completely review yesterday and add just a little bit. So let's completely review yesterday. Yesterday, we talked about if you were going to do a reference triangle that was like, let's say here, and that would be like, to me, that looks like a whole bunch of 45-degree angles. So this was 3 pi over 4. So whenever I do 3 pi over 4, I say, well, here's pi, and here's 1/4 of the way to pi. That means the black one there is 3/4 of the way to pi, and then I make the triangle around that. Label all the sides, label all the angles, and then I'll remind you what to do when you can't draw a triangle. But for right now, just make the triangle. Because if you don't have that triangle, you can't answer, like, what's sine of 3 pi over 4? So that's what our question's going to be. What's sine of 3 pi over 4? So here's your triangle. Now there's so many little things you have to memorize, like pi over 4 was 45. If you didn't know that, you're behind. And there's a whole bunch of little facts that you should have memorized. At some point, I may take a moment and go over all the things you should have memorized, and then you could make 3x5 cards or something for that, but that's not today. I'm just going to say, you should know this. So then you should know this. And if you don't know, it's kind of just a memorized thing. And then another little fact you should know is that this is 1, 1, and root 2. And then I said the most common mistake in circle trig, and there's a mistake up here. Negative. Negative right there. Now some kids ask, why is that side negative versus other sides? Well, it's because from the origin here, if you were going to go to this spot here, you'd have to go to the left. And going that direction is negative. Is going up negative? No, so that one's positive. All right, it's because it's about the direction you're going. If you going this way, you'd be left, and that's negative. And up, that's not negative. Okay, then last but not least, to do sine, I use this angle. That's the reference angle. Some of you forgot to label that on your test. That one's the reference angle. So I use that one to do my sine, which is sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite's this, hypotenuse is that, 1 over square root. And I'm writing it this way because on a Schoology quiz, which is what the homework for today is, on a Schoology quiz, you have to type SQRT parentheses, the number. So 1 over SQRT2. Does that make sense to you? Okay. Now, I told you about sine was not opposite over hypotenuse, but y over, who's got a short-term memory? Y over r. If you forgot that, write it down. It'll help you remember it. And the next one, so many little things to memorize. Cosine is very similar. So write these down right now on your iPad. You'll need them today, like later in the homework. If you don't know that it's y over r, you can't do the problem. So what's cosine? X over r. And then tangent, be careful, it's not over r this time. Y over x is correct. You have to memorize those. Now let me give you an example of when you might use that. Bonthius, have you got these written down yet? Good. Here's when you'd use it. If I said, your line is not like right there where you'd normally draw a triangle. Your line is right there. How are you going to draw a triangle now? You can't. You might think, well, I can draw a triangle. You can't draw a 90-degree angle dropping to the x-axis. If you drop to the x-axis, you're right on top of where you used to be. So there's no triangles for this kind. These are called the quad. Does anyone remember them? These 4 spots. Quad whats? Yes. Yes, these are the quadrants, but those angles are called the quadrantals. I said the word, but I told you you wouldn't have to memorize it, so I forgive you for not knowing that. But those 4 spots are called the quadrantals. Now, if they give you a point, yay. They gave you a point, like let's say they said that this was at 0, 2. Great. Then you can do the problem with that. But they didn't. They didn't give you a number. They just said, I want sine of pi over 2. Well, I'm in the right spot. That's where pi over 2 is, like right there, halfway to pi right here. But there's no numbers. Then default to a 1. So should this spot right here be 1, 0 or 0, 1? Don't overthink it. 0, 1. So if you don't know how long this is, say it's 1. You know why? Because it's the easiest number to work with. And I've said this word a few times, the unit circle has a radius of 1. So do it like the unit circle. All right, so that spot is 0, 1. Would you please give a name to all these spots so that if they don't give you numbers, you use these numbers. Everybody take a second and label those spots. Like 0, 1, 1, 0, negative 1, 0, 0, negative 1. These are the hardest ones. The other ones are pretty easy. These, they didn't give you numbers, so you've got to make up numbers. So this one right here by the pi, what's that? Negative 1, 0. Brady, this one down here.
0, negative 1.
Excellent. Dominic, this one over here.
1, 0.
Excellent. Now that I said that, and you also know these, you should be able to answer the question, what is sine of pi over 2? That should snap you into like, oh, so that's that spot. And oh, sine is y over r. And oh, I know what y and r are. And so I can answer that question. Sine of pi over 2. Please compare your answer to the kid next to you, and if you don't understand, just say, I don't get it, and they can maybe show you. Now, some of you are paired with a person taking the test, which I understand might be hard. All right, Jaden, what do you say? Sine of pi over 2 is? It's y over r, right? And so what's y? Yep. Over r, which is? There you go. Would that be a legal answer? Yes. Is it even better to just simplify it down to 1? Yes. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Cool. Now without help, what is cosine of pi? Now some of you are going to be wondering, is the radius negative? No. Remember, the radiuses are never negative. Sides can be negative, but when you're dividing by the radius, you'll never use a negative number for the radius. All right. Turn and talk to the kid next to you and see if you got the same answer for this one. All right, so cosine, would you guys agree it's x over r? Would you agree that cosine is x over r? For this point right here, what is the x? It's negative 1. So negative 1 over what's the r at that spot? What is the radius? Well, hint, on all of these, the radius is 1. Every one of them, it's 1. So it's negative 1 over 1. Who had that one right? Raise your hand if you did. Okay, cool. All right, so negative 1 over 1. I'm fine with that because it reminds you you have two sides. Do you get that this is always an angle and this is always two sides? So if they ever only have one number over there, you could actually put it over 1 so that you know you actually have two sides whenever, even if there's one number. Like if they give you a 2, well, then that's really 2 over 1. Okay. All right, let's do one more like that. If I asked you for cosine of 3 pi over 2. Now, I know some kids don't know where 3 pi over 2 is, but maybe they know where pi is. And then maybe they can figure out where 1 pi over 2 is. And maybe they can count it up and go 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. And then maybe they can look on this chart and figure out what cosine is, and then they can answer the question. Cosine of 3 pi over 2. Okay, compare with the kid next to you, see if you get the same thing. So first you go x over r, and then you know you're here, right? That's where 3 pi over 2 is. And then cosine is the x, which is 0, over the radius, which is 1. If you put 0 over 1, I would have accepted it, but can't you simplify that to just 0? Yes. So either one of those is right. 0 over 1 or 0. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. I think you're getting this. Yay. All right, so then I have a quick reminder of yesterday's when they just gave you a point, like negative 2 comma 3. And I'm putting it right there because that's where negative 2 comma 3 would be. Would you please draw the triangle around that and then figure out what sine of that weird angle is? You should know where theta is, and you can use the reference angle for it and make the whole triangle. And remember, sine is y over r again. Got to have those memorized. I don't want to overdo the partner thing, so I won't ask you to compare this time. I'll just ask a kid to tell me their answer. So let's go with row 2, last person, Lux, that's you. I'm drawing the triangle ba-doo, ba-doo, ba-doo. This must be negative 2. This must be 3. That last side I'll need, because if I'm doing sine, I got to have the hypotenuse. Square root of 9 plus 4, because I'm on the longest side, square root of 13. So, what do you think the answer was, Lux?
Sine theta is y over r, so that's 3 over 13.
You are correct. Y over r, 3 over root 13. Now, couldn't you have done it with sine as opposite over hypotenuse? Yes, and it would be the same answer. Think about it. The opposite is 3, hypotenuse is square root of 13. It works with y over r, and it works with opposite over hypotenuse. So why do we even need the y over r thing? Because if it was down here, there is no opposite in hypotenuse on the problem like that. You have to use like 0 comma negative 1, and then you have to know sine is y over r. Okay, so let's do one like that. Sine of 0. That's weird. Always, every time, make your picture. In this case, you can't draw a triangle, but you can make a picture. And I know there's a few kids that don't know where 0 is. It's right there. It's that spot. But like, well, I don't know the numbers put. Well, you should think about the numbers. We had it labeled just 2 seconds ago. Remember, if you don't have numbers, default to 0s and 1s. Okay. Ethan T, what's that spot? What comma what right here?
1,0.
1 comma 0. Good. And sine is what letter over what letter?
X over R.
Y over R. Okay, and so then that might change your answer. Which of those two is my y value? 0 over the radius, which is 1. Good. And 0 over 1 is 0. I would accept also just 0 over 1. Either of those is fine. By the way, two of your answers on today's Schoology quiz are going to go like this. And then what are you supposed to put? Is that 0? No, it's the word undefined. UNDEFINED. That is what that is. Undefined. All right. Let's go to this page. ASTC. I don't like this chart. I feel like I can explain it better. So off on the side, though, I do need to explain ASTC. It's a big deal. I told you you're going to draw this a million times. What I didn't say is that you were also going to need to label it with ASTC, but because until today you didn't even know what they were. So now why does this matter? Because it tells you where the functions are positive and negative. I don't know if you even noticed, but on your first test, we didn't do much with negative angles, and we didn't do much with functions that were negative, like sine of something came out negative. We almost never did that. So we do a lot with it this chapter. So we got to get really good at when sine is positive. And A stands for all. I'm just going to use the A for that. All of them are positive in the first quadrant. Do you get that when we started and we draw random triangles? They're always in the first quadrant. Their sides are always positive. So all of them are positive right there. Only sine of the angle, again, no sense in writing SIN without the angle sign. It just means nothing. Sine with an angle, sine theta, means something. Sine's the only one that's positive in that quadrant. That means the other two, which are cosine and tangent, are negative. So if I asked you this question, where is sine positive? Well, they're all positive here, so it would be in this quadrant and that quadrant. Those are the two places where sine is positive. Judging by what I just said, where do you think cosine is positive? Yes?
Quadrants 1 and 4.
Yes, quadrant 1, because all of them are positive. 2, 3, and 4. You don't have to put those. You should just know those are the quadrant numbers. So he is exactly right when he says cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant, because down there, cosine is positive. Cosine will come out positive. Why? Because the sides of the triangles that make up cosine will be positive. Yes? Oh, I thought there was a hand. I thought you were raising a hand. Okay. All right, so here is a typical question that comes from this. Well, and of course, T stands for tangent. And tangent is positive there, cosine is positive there. And all of them are positive here. So here's a typical question. What quadrant, I'm just going to say quad, has positive sine and positive cosine? So if I were you, I'd make this ASTC, and from now on, I take the extra 2 seconds it takes to put ASTC on. I'm telling you, I know where you're going, I know your next test, and I know it has tons of questions about the ASTC. All of them are positive, sine is positive, tangent's positive, cosine's positive. So you should be able to tell what quadrant I'm talking about. What quadrant has positive sine and positive cosine? Well, here's the ones that have positive sine, the blue ones. Would you agree those have positive sine? And which of those also has positive cosine? Yeah, that one has positive cosine. Well, so does this. So where is the overlap? It's in quadrant 1. Quadrant 1's the only quadrant that has positive sine and cosine. Now, the way the book is, or the way your tests and your Schoology quizzes and homework is gonna say it, is greater than 0. Do you get that means the same thing as positive? Okay, and so instead of saying positive cosine, it's gonna say cosine is greater than 0. Okay, so I'm gonna give you one more like this. Let's see if you got this. Where is sine positive, but cosine negative? So for some of you, on the next test, you're gonna draw your little thing and you're gonna forget to put ASTC on it. And I am gonna silently judge you. Be like, probably gonna screw it up. Because they're gonna forget what quadrant to be in. So please, just slap the ASTC on it from now on. It takes a half a second. Sine positive and cosine negative. Well, it's only one place. And it's right there. Sine's positive because it says S on it. Sine's positive. And cosine's negative because why? Well, because cosine's only positive here and here. So cosine must be negative here and here. So that's the spot. Quadrant 2. Who had quadrant 2? Okay, awesome. I think you're getting this. If nothing, even if you don't get it right now, get used to the all, sine, tangent, cosine, and we give it a little nickname, all students take calc. It's just a mnemonic. And it is true, after this class, pretty much everybody will take calc. Now, some of them will take it right away. Some of them will take it in AP flavor. Some of them will take it in regular calc, and some of you will wait a year and then you'll take calc in college. Some of you will take stats instead, and then eventually you'll be like, crap, my major requires calculus. I guess I gotta go take calc. So you'll all take calc eventually. Probably. Okay, ASTC. Moving on to this. I don't like it because they missed a couple things. But what they're trying to say, to draw an angle in standard position, that just means like, here, I've drawn my angle. That's standard position. You all know we start here, right? And then the angle is made up when you draw that black line, for example. You draw it somewhere. That's drawing in standard position. Then it says draw the reference triangle. Boop, boop, boop. Then it says find the reference angle. I think, since that's 30, that you really should label all of them. And then I think you should label all of the sides. And it doesn't say that in this list. I agree we should find the reference angle, but I think we should label all the sides. 1, 2, square root, 3. And then I think on our list, you should be like, where did you forget the negative? You know, because usually there's a negative, like here. And then it says you could SOHCAHTOA. That's totally true. You're going to use it 1,000,000 times. So I add a couple little steps to that list, which is mostly label all the sides and all the angles, and then you'll use SOHCAHTOA to get the answer. So now that I made this triangle, if I was asking you sine of 5 pi over 6, that would be the triangle you would have drawn, because that's where 5 pi over 6 is. And this is the last pi over 6 that gets you to 6 pi over 6, right? And then what's sine of that? Well, it's opposite over hypotenuse, no big deal, 1/2. And sine came out positive. Shouldn't be a surprise, because A, S, T, C, sine comes out positive there. See? It came out positive 1/2, and that was right. All right, so moving on to this one. Sine of 315. Let's not do all of them, just do sine. Find it, draw it, and I know that it's not 360, but a little less. So I know it's in quadrant 4. You know, like I know it's got to be there-ish. You just got to figure out how much less than 360 it was, because 360 would have been to there, but we got to back off. That's how I think you should think about that. Pause for a second. Let me try that. Okay, while I was on the pause there, I drew this out, and then the most common mistake in circle trick would be forget that is negative. Okay, now does that even matter in this case? Yeah, it does, because sine, we're going to use that reference angle. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, which is -1 over square root 2. If you were typing that into a Schoology quiz, you'd put the negative on top, always. Divided by S QRT parentheses 2. Forget those parentheses. It's going to mark it wrong, and I'm not going to change it. Just pay attention. Put your SQRT in a parenthesis 2. Okay. All right. Move on. Not that one. I want to do a quadrantal one. Not that one. I'm going to make my own. So everybody just go off to the side, and I want you to do cosine of 3 pi over 2. But there's no numbers. You're supposed to know what to do when there's no numbers. Turf, were you down here?
Yeah.
Excellent. What point did you use that was down there if you don't have numbers?
0, maybe 1.
You are correct, sir. And then the last thing you got to know is cosine is what over what?
Cosine is
Y? No, or x? Which one is it?
the x.
It is x.
X
X over r. So what's our x?
0,
Over what's our r?
1.
Yes. Notice radiuses are always positive. So 0 over 1. So what's the final answer?
0.
0 is correct. I would have also accepted 0 over 1. Who had that one right? Sweet. Then we're ready for the Schoology quiz. Everybody open up the Schoology quiz. Number 1. Tate, would you read me number 1, please?
Cosine is 120.
Cosine 120. If I were you, I would have a Notability open, and I would be making this. Do ASTC. Okay, it only takes a half a second to write the ASTC. I'd start doing that now. This is where 60 is. This is where 180 is. So then 120 must be 260s. It's like there-ish. That's about 120. Then you draw the triangle around it. Doop, doop. I know this is like a pain in the butt, but it's a great way to do it. It works every single time. So then, this must be a 60. 30, 60, 90. I know this one. Opposite from the 30 is a 1. Hypotenuse is the 2. Square root of 3. Look for the missing negative. Oh, that's negative. And then, cosine is x over r. Or adjacent over hypotenuse. But it's true, that is the x direction, isn't it? Negative 1 over r, which is 2. Or cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Both of them work. You can do it as x over r or adjacent over hypotenuse. Either way works. Always, if you're putting in a negative, put it on the first number. It is true that 1 over negative 2 would be true, but it makes it confusing when you write 1 divided by negative 2. It looks like you have like plus minus 2 or something weird. Put the negative on the first number. Okay, so your answer for number 1 is negative 1 slash 2. Done with that. Okay, now we're going to do 1, 2, skip a few to number 13. Everybody get to number 13. I know it's kind of a pain, but the quiz should allow you to go back later to do the other problems. Number 13 is kind of hard. It's negative 450. And it makes you do a whole bunch of things right. Like you got to go, I don't even know how far that is. But I'm going to go negative, so I draw my circle like that. I went in the negative direction. Negative 360. That's negative 360, so how much more do I have to do? Negative 360 plus how much more of a negative? 90 more? That feels like it might work. 90 more than that? So then like here, does that feel right to you? You are correct. That's the spot. So then I draw my line. But there's no numbers. We went over this. So then you can go, oh, so if there's no numbers, I use zeros and ones. And that spot would be 0, negative 1. And from there, you ought to be able to figure out, does it want sine, cosine, and tangent of it? Okay. So sine of it is y over r. and I know the y, and I know the radius. Don't forget, one of your answers eventually will be that you're dividing by 0, so the answer is undefined. So you type out undefined. It says it right in the directions. So sine of this is y over r, so the y value is -1. Over the radius is 1. If you wrote that, you really should simplify it. I'm not sure the Schoology quiz will always have an over 1 answer, like, because you can simplify it. So the -1 is the good answer for this one. And then cosine of it is x over r. And the x is 0. Over the radius is 1. And 0 over 1 is just 0. It's the easiest thing to type, and it's right, so yay, we're done. And then tangent is the weird one. You figure it out. If you have to, look it up. Gotta have memorized those. All right, that's all I have for you for today.